Okay. Sure.
Let's start with the number one item. Oh, you want to do roll?
So yeah, for roll call, we have a quorum of members present. We have Vice Chair Knorr, Alder Hanibra, Lang, Carrie Schaffner, and Alder.
Right. Minutes of the 2026-24 meeting. Any changes or corrections noted by anyone on the committee? Hearing none. Consensus minutes are approved. Item number 2, resolution 2024-10, release of public utility easement on Ridge Rock Apartments, PDC 2632. Sean, you went through that?
Sure. So this is east of Pleasant View Road at the top of the hill, where there's been a couple of vacant lots for a long time. There are proposed apartments there, and as part of the proposal, there's going to be a bit of a land swap. In fact, let me just go to the drawing of that. So here's Pleasant View Road. At the very highest point is probably about here someplace. And right now there are two lots. The northerly is slightly bigger than lot 3. So this is lot 4 up here, lot 3 down here. And then we've got an outlot that sort of is squared up to outlot 3, this dashed line. And so the goal as part of this is for the city to give up a bit of a triangle and to gain a couple of triangles so that our existing path, which is already kind of paralleling this new proposed line, will be on city land. Along with that, there are easements that follow these lot lines. So really the goal of tonight's agenda items is for us to release those easements. And number one, we don't have water or sewer over here. And once the bike path is on city property, we won't need an easement for it either. So we just won't have any interest in these things. Let's give Lauren just a second, because I know she's with PPD just to our north of this lot. And so she's got an interest in this agenda item. So Lauren, to catch you up just a little bit, we were talking about the proposed land swap to make our outlot follow the bike path over here. And as part of that, the city would be getting some pieces of land and giving up a little triangle of land, and then they'll subdivide that for the 3 apartment buildings they're talking about. Tonight's agenda item is just about releasing a public utility easement and then a sanitary sewer bike path easement.
Okay, thank you.
The first agenda item is this release of the general utility easements. That's all squared off like that. And then the next agenda item will be city water and sewer and bike path that also follows an alignment that no longer will make any sense.
So we're only doing the resolutions to release the easements. This land swap is not,
Separate.
yeah.
Yep. That's just background for why we're doing this.
And do either of these need city attorney review?
The city attorney has reviewed these to draft the resolutions that are in the packet.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, Henry, your video went off. We haven't lost quorum, but I just want to mention.
So we need a motion to approve this?
We are looking for that, yes.
I move that we recommend to the Common Council approval of Resolution 2024-10 to release the public utility easement at Rock Ridge Apartments.
I second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries, it's unanimous. I don't know.
Was anyone opposed?
Any opposed? No. I heard 5, I think,
Okay,
pretty sure.
well, your hearing's good.
It's
Unfair
mechanically
advantage.
enhanced. Item number 3, resolution 2024-11, release of sanitary sewer, public water and pedestrian easements on Rockridge Apartments.
Yeah.
Again, PC 2632. Same thing?
So this is the same thing for the same reason. It's
Mhm.
just for our water and sewer, which is unused. We don't have facilities there. And then the pedestrian path that'll get resolved by the land swap.
And that was the second thing you showed us.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's slightly wider.
Then I will move that we recommend to the Common Council approval of resolution 2024-11 to release the sanitary sewer, public water and pedestrian easements at Rockridge Apartments.
I'll second again.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Yes, motion carries unanimous. 4, resolution 2024-9, public water main and sanitary sewer easement agreement and bicycle path easement agreement for Solus Natural Burial Preserve PC 2620. Sean?
And again, I think a drawing might be helpful for us here, but this is along Onken Road at the far north edge of the city. Where kind of in the middle of where there is no currently development. And sorry, but north is to the right on this drawing. So Onken Road is off to the edge of the screen here. There is an east-west easement through what is to be marketed as a natural burial cemetery. So no embalming, no casket, that kind of cemetery. And in our long-term planning for the community of Bishop's Bay, we've got both water and sewer that have to run across this site. This isn't right where we had expected them in the master planning, but because there is no development yet to the east or to the west, at least anything that's been laid out in detail, this is as good a guess as anybody's about where future roads may line up. And there is a note in the resolution and the easement itself to the effect that we recognize this may have to move if future developments move to. But this would serve 2 purposes. This would get water and sewer across the lot and also a bike path across the lot.
And where's the burial preserve going to be?
It's, again, off the page some, but it's literally these big blocks of grass that would be carved into burial plots. And Onken Road being off the map to the north,
And the bike path is gonna go through?
east-west through it. Yeah, so these gray areas are basically driveways to get among the blocks of burial lots.
But none of it's built yet.
None of it's built yet.
So they're just doing this to make sure there's a connection for Bishop's Bay.
The potential connection, exactly. So if a future road lines up more here, we may need to look at turning this driveway into our easement instead. But for right now, this is what we're proposing, and without any specific development plans being put together, it's difficult to say if this is a good guess or a bad guess.
So who put this forward? Or with you all, or the city came up and said, hey, we need something?
Well, the master development planning showed that we need looping through here, services through here.
Okay,
But yes, T-Wall with Beer Vendor, and I think it's actually Wisconsin Foundation, but it's effectively the same players proposed this.
Yeah, so a follow-up to that, why now? Why not wait till there's more specific plans?
I think the concern, at least on my end, is if we wait long enough, there will be people buried and then it's much harder to get a water line through here.
Oh, I didn't realize they were that far along.
Well, they're starting in on utilities and the shelter building soon.
Okay,
So yeah, they want to get going on this, and it's not like they're gonna start, burying people right here next week, but I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason on how sales of these things work.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems weird to be talking about a water main easement going through a cemetery that has not yet opened, but will be burying people.
Yes,
Naturally.
certainly before we build a water main.
Yeah.
But at least this way they'd stay clear.
That's the goal,
Hopefully.
right? At least we'll have the opportunity to build a water main later.
I'm assuming they're kind of mapping out where the burial sites are gonna go around whatever gets approved here.
Have
So they probably can't get too detailed until there's an easement in place, maybe.
Yeah, it's a little chicken and egg kind of
Yeah,
thing,
right.
right?
And you said something about roads lining up, but there's no chance this bike path would become a road instead, correct?
Well, not a public road, certainly, and that was
Okay.
never the goal.
Okay.
It was just a matter of how do we get, if there's a road over here, right? That's making an elbow or something,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe the road is further off the page and there's just an easement between two yards that end up getting platted. We could at least get our water main looped through here to get to a road on the other side, even though car traffic would not go through.
Okay.
So this also just goes to council? Legal's already reviewed it?
Yeah, right, so, Matt drafted this resolution as well.
Okay.
So go back to our agenda. And it's effectively two easement agreements just in one resolution. One's for water and sewer and the other one's for bike path. They just happen to be in exactly the same spot.
So this agreement has to go to council.
Correct.
But that's it, just.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend to the Common Council approval of resolution 2024-09 to accept the public sanitary sewer and water easement agreement and the public bicycle path easement agreement.
Okay.
Carries first. And we need a second.
Second.
What's the second? Further discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? None, the motion carries.
So at the same place, because there is no sewer or water, they'll be drilling a well and are proposing to put in a septic tank. On occasion, then will just need to be pumped out. Until there is water or sewer, there's no way for them to connect to city services, even though this is in a city area. It's just not serviced yet. So to do that, it's required that we as the city put ourselves in a position that if costs need to be collected through DSPS, will be the agent that collects those. So I talked with Bill Burns about that and he said, we have a process for that. So it's nothing really special for us to put a charge on the properties if we need to get involved in septic maintenance in the future. So with that, Matt Fleming had a chance to look at this too. And so then just because the mayor would have to sign it for the city, the council would have to authorize that.
And this is on their private property.
Their private property, their private tank.
And
their maintenance responsibility. It's just if we have to get involved, because they're not maintaining it, then we put a charge against the property.
Do we get to charge a fee for doing that?
I think special charges allow for that because we
Yeah.
typically do that for sidewalk
Okay.
work and we get our own costs back.
Yeah, I would want to make sure that the city is made whole for any time that we spend having to collect these charges and pass them on to the county, even if it's, even if we have a system, there's still some time spent doing it.
Right. I don't know
Sean,
that I've ever seen one of these before. Oh, go ahead, Gary.
Okay, do we have to like approve the size? Like, I don't know like what's on this site, so this must be there's a building on here. Like, I guess how do we know that they're have the correct specifications, I guess, for their tank? Like, are we liable for that at all?
We're not, no. Veerbicker designed that and DSPS will be reviewing that. It's more of a plumbing thing than a city engineering thing. But it's effectively, I would say, a small-ish funeral home with just a couple restrooms.
yeah, it's pretty clear in there that you place charges on the tax roll.
Well, but that's the charges that they would owe to Dane County that we'd be collecting. What I'm looking for is, can we get paid for the amount of time and effort that it takes for us to collect those charges and pass them on?
Yeah, and I don't see where this explicitly says that,
I can ask
but that is
Matt
what
at
we
the
typically
council
do.
meeting. Mhm,
Sure. Or Bill might know too.
mhm.
I just know when we do that for
Yeah.
what we're doing, that's just part of it.
Okay.
So we need a motion for this one as well.
Yes, we're looking for a motion to recommend common council approval of this agreement.
I'll go ahead and make that motion. Let me see that, let's see, we recommend to the common council approval of the holding tank agreement, PC 2620.
I second.
We have Gary made the motion, Brendan seconded it. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi,
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. 6.
Right, so 6 is Lake Street and Dewey Court reconstruction plan. We've been working on, well, MSA has been working on preliminary design. And we had gotten guidance from Public Works Committee, Park Rec Forestry, and the Common Council on how to pursue final design. So this is MSA's final design, and I think we had maybe still a couple of things to tweak yet, Kevin, am I right on that or wrong on that? Because it came in sort of at agenda time, and so I know I had.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a couple things we're still tweaking. I think this is generally it, but we can, like I said, work with you on those. And then there was a couple of comments that came in today too, so we can, I don't know, talk with you, or if you want to go through them. I don't know what you want to go in detail of.
I think maybe let's start with your memo, which laid out kind of the bigger policy level issues of final design, and I trust you've all had a chance to read that. I don't know if there are any questions, but you'll remember at preliminary design, we weren't sure to what degree we might have to replace some sanitary sewer, and we now know, or at least have a good plan for what we're going to do with the unfortunate sag in Allen Boulevard. So that became something we weren't really looking forward to, but it's in the plans. sidewalk is on both sides of Lake Street as requested. That requires removing some of the arborvitae trees and bushes at the end of Middleton Beach Road, Lake Street. We were pretty sure that that would be one of the design consequences. Water main is new throughout. And so we're still in process of finalizing the easement over at the condos. I wouldn't want to say backyard, but lake edge yard, right? To give the contractor just a little bit of extra room, because right now it's a very skinny easement in which both sewer and water are there, and they have to be 8 feet apart from each other. So there's just not much room. But I think in talking, we've come to resolution on how best to approach that. And there are some trade-offs with everything, but I think it's reasonable and fair. And we'll get into the details of that separately. That's its own easement. We're going to try salvaging and reinstalling a fence on the north side of the condos property. We don't ordinarily do that, but that's one of the trade-offs we talked about, being reasonable and fair for the extra elbow room of the easement. And it looks like it should come apart pretty easily. It's built in panels that look like they should come apart. The dual storm inlets, I know MSA took some time looking at what are our options, what's our best bet to try to capture some of the potential sediment in stormwater. It looks like sumps is a good answer. And I know too, they rerouted the discharge from those inlets further west, which is against the flow of the main we're trying to connect into, but it puts that connection further away from the springs that are in the condos property. And so we want to be as clear from that as possible. So I think that's a good improvement since preliminary design. The allowance that we're putting into the bid for undercut, I hope ends up being a little bit conservative, but conservative is a really good thing when we're talking about unknown soil conditions. So I think that was a really good idea to just count on us doing some undercut geotextile fabric before we put our new basement in. This set of plans is showing that little sidewalk connection where there's right now a gap at the end of Dewey Court. The grading of that is a little bit tricky. So I think that's one of the things we just wanted to take a little bit closer look at of how best do we do that. The street is being narrowed quite a lot. At the east end of Lake Street, it's about 52 feet now, and it would become 36 feet, which allows us a little bit of grass and some sidewalk, really with minimal additional widening of that. So it's less impervious area. And the footprint of it really isn't much bigger, 66 feet of right of way. And then the park area, I think you'll probably see more dramatic changes. That's been pretty fleshed out. That'll be talked about at the Parks Rec and Forestry Commission meeting next Monday, I want to say. But if you have any comments on that, that's welcome. And then any of the existing sidewalk ramps within the project limits will be upgraded to our typical ProAg standards. So we'll have the detectable warning fields and correct slopes. Those things. Beyond that, we'll get into the cost estimate separately. And then Kevin put together a couple conceivable timelines here. They both start with, if we can get plan approval, even if there are a few details still to be buttoned up, we could start advertising for bids. In fact, maybe even that Thursday right after the next Thursday, which would be ideal. By law, we're required to put advertisements at least a week apart and at least a week prior to opening bids. So the upper schedule is a little bit more aggressive. The other one is a little bit less aggressive. And I think for me, even when we're looking at early April, my preference would be to kind of push a little bit on this. It gets us to construction a little bit faster. But I think the bigger news is the sooner we can get onto contractors' radar and get bids opened, probably the better off we are at this time of year.
Sean, the only, the only thing I would just mention is on the upper schedule too. Obviously, it's kind of a guess as to construction. There is a permit that we're working for, you know, with the DNR and that pier and everything. So we do have to get that, which is in the process, but you know, we have to go through that chapter 30 thing that we were talking about via email today and everything too. So
Exactly, and neither one of us, neither one of these timelines, I guess, has any certainty that we'll have that all locked down prior to bid award. So at that point, we almost might as well give the contractor some time to order materials and get it ready. Even if we can't pull the trigger and start construction, at least everything else is lined up and ready to go.
We need the pier permit to start construction on the road? I mean, what happens if we just delay putting in the pier?
I think just from a contractor perspective, the removals might be something they kind of want to do first.
I understand removals, but that's not putting a new pier in. Is a permit to remove the pier as well, Kevin?
it's basically to make any alterations, to my understanding, because when that boat launch and area was, that was had grant dollars associated with it. So it's basically to make any, I think, alterations to the end of the where the ramp is now.
Okay, so you need the permit to do anything in there,
Change it.
To change the boat.
change it, okay.
Yeah.
So you could do the road work, but you're saying, John, not a good idea to.
If we get a little inventive with the contractor and if the contractor's cool with it, they could start on sewer work and water
Right.
work
Mhm.
without starting on that piece of the road work.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I
Yep.
mean, to try and keep this thing on schedule as best we can. Any ideas, Kevin, on what DNR is gonna take for permitting?
I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but they said it could be like up to 3 months, but it could be shorter than that. It's pretty, I mean, you know, you'd like to think it'd be fairly quick, but I think she gave us like it could take 60 to 90 days or something like that. And I will
They seem
mention
like
that
6 to 12 weeks.
was it? Okay.
Haven't we been talking to them since August about this?
Yeah, I think August,
they
because
need-
they wrote us a letter in September, last September. Yeah,
Okay.
and so MSA and Kylie have been working together on that, keeping DNR in the loop. It's gonna take US Fish and Wildlife some review time too, and I think DNR is less sure about how their
Okay.
things are working.
And what is do we know the total amount that, if we had to pay it all back, do you know what that amount is?
I don't remember. I thought the whole thing altogether was something in the low $30,000 range.
I'm kind of like, maybe we just
Do it,
eat that cost if we have to.
yeah, get the road done.
Yeah,
The
well,
Water main.
Oh, yeah, we should see how long it's gonna take, but didn't Bell Farm have to wait like a year or two? They had to
Was it-
wait some ungodly long amount of time for a letter. That shouldn't have taken. so
yeah, they're
Well,
not doing
DNR 's
much
never-
really.
In my entire life, DNR has never been.
Oh,
Okay,
They seem like they've been pretty responsive, at least when Kylie's been writing to them,
Okay.
that they know just what she's talking about and get back
Mhm.
to her. And so I think that's really encouraging.
Okay,
So those were the main issues, things that changed at a policy level between preliminary design and final design. We did get some input from Ginny Corwin, who's here tonight, Tom Carmen, who's here tonight. And I know he emailed it to everybody on the committee, or she and he emailed their comments to everybody on the committee. I myself barely read them. I was at dinner tonight, so I don't know if you've had an opportunity or if you want to go through those.
I was
some of them
going,
touch on kind of the same points.
I was going to ask if they would like to speak to those comments. Before they start, though, I had one question about your comment about Allen Boulevard, which is the top number one.
Yep.
So can you explain this? This is a new development? Is it?
No, we didn't know
Okay.
what the nature of the problem was. We just knew that there was every now and then non-flowing water in the sanitary sewer someplace in there, but we
Okay.
never could tell it. It was underwater, it seemed. And so Kevin's team took some additional survey shots, and it's pretty flat in theory, but clearly also got a sag in it.
Okay.
And so we didn't know that previously and added that to the design. And that's why even though it's 8-inch pipe, we're proposing putting in 10-inch pipe in the sag, because the upstream and downstream inverts don't even allow for the minimal slope that an 8-inch pipe would require.
The other
And-
thing I guess I'd add to that, Sean, is I think Mike and his crew went out and they tried to televise a lot of it, and they couldn't, there's a stretch there they couldn't even televise because it kind of collapsed, or is getting close to collapsing or something on the west end where it connects there.
Or offset maybe.
Yeah, or offset, something that they didn't feel comfortable taking the camera through anyway, so,
Yeah, because they weren't certain they were getting it back.
right.
Okay, this will be, when we get to the cost part, I think this will be important because to me, that's not part of the project we budgeted for last year. I mean, it should be done,
No.
but I don't think the overall project should be, as we consider what to do about the cost, that should be a separate.
I'm surprised, there's not more of that on Allen Boulevard all the way up and down.
Yeah, and those costs split out for sewer utility, right, Kevin?
Yeah,
Okay. So it's not general fund, it's sewer utility fund.
Right.
Sure.
Were there any questions on the plans themselves? Anyone noticed?
Really, I think they did a good job, and a lot of the previous comments in this meeting, with these meetings, have been addressed.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of good input and clear input, so that was helpful.
So I guess I can designate how much time we want to spend on the new memos that came through.
Yeah, I have them available if you want to go through them. We start with Ginny Corwin, represents Middleton Beach Road Neighborhood Association, and I think she got her memo in first, so.
Did she? I thought, I didn't think, but anyway.
Well, I think she sent one to me before she sent it.
Okay,
all of you.
it came in second to me, Sean. That's all I know.
Kendra has her hand up. I don't know if we want to do that first or.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carrie, I missed. Ginny's.
Oh,
Okay.
Kendra has her hand up.
Thanks, Carrie. I can wait. I'd actually like to hear just what the neighbors have to say before I chime in.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, Kendra.
Yeah, she has a hand up. I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be watching.
Just throw something at me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that bright
Okay.
yellow hand isn't enough.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah, I
go.
know on that big screen, it definitely gets lost. I can wait until after they discuss their concerns, because actually my question or my concern is about the sidewalk on the southern side of Lake Street and how it connects to Middleton Beach Road, so.
Okay. So the first thing Ginny brought up is about stagnant water in the ditch on the west side of Middleton Beach Road, south of Lake Street. And that's beyond the scope of what we had asked the designer to look at. It could and probably should be its own project someday, but not part of this project.
It's a missed opportunity, and the problem is if you do this project, when will you ever loop back to try and address that?
Yeah, and
And it's gonna be hard to do once you've redone Lake Street.
well, no harder, I would say. It's its own thing.
How do we get that on a plan to address that?
Well, that's a good question, because we're constantly looking at ditch maintenance kinds of things. This would be, I think, a ditch maintenance kind of thing. I happen to know that that ditch is very, very flat. So
Yes.
in theory, it
Oh,
might
yeah.
drain,
There's
but
no
not in
grade.
practicality.
We understand that.
Yeah.
I would note that Tom Carmen's comments suggest putting a structure or cut in the curb into a swale or piping to divert stormwater from Lake Street to the swale along Middleton Beach Road. And that suggested it might help move some of the stagnant water.
I
So
think you'd be replacing water with water.
Mhm.
And it's not like the ditch doesn't ever get water. Middleton Beach Road also runs off and gets water into the ditch. It's just when it drains down.
Would it push it down into the
Stagnant.
culvers so that
Yeah.
actually go to the lake, or would it just sit there and be stagnant?
So if we move some water from, say, Middleton, it rains on Middleton Beach Road and water gets into the ditch, right? And the head of that is gonna push water into the lake eventually. If we add a little bit of more water from Lake Street at the same time, it's also gonna flow to the lake. The problem is it doesn't drain. That's the nature of the beast. So whether we get some fresh water kind of flowing through there every now and then, we're still gonna get stagnant water. And whether we add a little bit from Lake Street or not, I would fully expect that that's gonna stay stagnant.
I don't know, Tom, maybe you have.
Why wasn't this addressed when Middleton Beach Road was redone?
I think it was out of scope for that too. It was really a road.
I know it was talked about, if I remember right.
It was looking at.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I know we have done some work shuffling dirt or mud around in there, but it just doesn't go anywhere. You know, it's
Hmm.
basically
If you can
tabletop.
replace old water with new water though, and keep it kind of rotating at least, and then it's an opportunity to take out some of the sediment and relieve some of the storm water going recently not down the street. Maybe it's part of the water resources stormwater, committee sometime in the future, but as Jenny was saying, it just felt like it's an opportunity. If there's an opportunity to engineer something in now as opposed to going back and doing cuts or additional work later, at least putting in, thinking about it, if something makes sense to start at this point.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to see a curb cut so much because then water's flowing over a sidewalk to get there. You'd want to put in a storm sewer. And yeah,
Thanks.
then we're talking about money, but again, it's just adding a little bit extra water that's already getting there. So you talk about turnover or adding fresh water, and there is some fresh water going there. But as soon as it drains out, just got newer stagnant water. But it's just there.
It's helpful to understand how we can move that forward through your processes. So just having this initial discussion. So
I think taking it to Stormwater Utility Board would be a good thing, as it does relate to stormwater maintenance.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a stormwater utility facility
Or water yeah, it's
or if it's just a city ditch.
okay.
And it seems, I don't fully understand which is which, but some of them are stormwater utility things and some aren't.
They're still ferreting that out.
You and me.
Are there stormwater inlets on the Middleton Beach Road
No,
No,
on the north end there? No.
no,
None.
it just flows off the road.
there's no curb.
Curb on, there's no.
Not even a curb?
We have
Not a
no
curb on the side.
stormwater management system on Middleton Beach Road.
Okay. That's part of
And the new
problem.
road slopes to the west, so that water runs into that swale area.
Mhm.
And that has been an improvement for our residents. At
And
least
now
their
it's-
driveways aren't flooding.
But
Yeah.
now it's settling in the
But
ditch
that's
and
been in there. This particular area down by Harbor has been like that for decades. And it's just green, scummy, buggy area. And there's a boardwalk where you can cut from Middleton Beach Road to Harbor. And so you're walking through all this buggy air bugs.
At least we're
Me-
correct drainage on Lake Street and having inlets there.
Yeah, it's an
Narrow.
improvement. I mean, now it just runs into the lake, so we can catch some sediment. So anyway, yeah, that might be the kind of thing to talk to Eric Sorensen, if you know Eric on our staff. he might have the best handle on which bucket this falls into committee wise.
And I mean, it's far enough for the conservancy. It's probably not anything that could drain that far south.
It could get us, well, when it goes to the culverts that go out to the lake.
Oh,
It,
Okay.
It kind of just has to, so as water sort of starts piling up, then it has finally some grade on it, so it can start to flow.
and it flows east, not south into the conservancy.
Pretty much south, straight south, I would say.
Oh. Oh, I'm talking about I'm talking about the pond, not the lake, not the street.
Oh. Yeah, right, so that would go east. The trees at the north end of MBR, I think are all kind of right on line with the sidewalk. Let me go to the drawings.
So maybe the bigger question is, why do you need a sidewalk on the south side of Lake Street? Especially if you're not gonna put it up near Harbor and you're saving their trees, why not save these trees also? And if you take the trees down, what's gonna prevent people from driving through there? Will you be putting up reflective posts to block that like you have on part of the cul-de-sac now? Or can you replace the trees with some other kind? I mean,
Yeah.
ideally, it'd be nice to have some greenery in there.
It looks like there is a sidewalk by Harbor.
Yeah, all the way through. it.
Yeah.
It's like,
Correct. Yep. So this is as requested. I think that was endorsed by the council to get sidewalks on both sides of the street.
And to
So that-
protect the trees.
To protect all the trees that we could along Harbor's parking lot, that
Mhm.
row of sort of mature, healthy maples.
But then from that connector path east,
Right, so
and
there's
even one of the trees west of the connector path there shows that it would be removed. I don't understand why that one would be removed.
these, right?
There's one she's talking about to the west that doesn't have, yep, that one there is also supposed to be removed. It's shown to be removed on a different sheet.
Oh, okay, yeah, so
Yep.
we should pick that up and draw an X through it then.
Yep, I'm making a note of that. And the reason for it is when we're bringing that sidewalk over, it would either when I walked it with the forester to basically to save that tree, we'd be coming into that existing ramp, basically right within the ramp. So we kind of need to bring it up a little ways to actually make a good connection before the ramp that crosses Lake Street is. So then he said that it would get basically too close and harm that tree. So that's the reason it's shown to be removed.
Is where we're drawing sort of proposed stuff in here.
Okay.
Yikes.
It's 7:00, you have it away.
Really not letting rotate pages, so that's frustrating.
I know he hasn't. I just yelled at him, but now I'm telling you.
Kendra? You're not muted.
There we go.
Right, so.
Sorry.
so-
Sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, you're not any place we haven't.
At least it was
Yeah.
clean.
Yeah, right, you're doing much better than I have done.
That's.
That is fair to say. Right, so the property line is kind of this dot, and you can kind of see this dashed line between there. We ordinarily try to get sidewalks in on a property line. I still have to pan myself down to Middleton Beach Road somehow.
Page 41 has, I think, a drawing that I can understand, but it's not, I rotated mine.
Oh. You go up a bit. Yeah, I was trying to rotate it and oddly downstairs on my computer, I can do that, but here on this one, not having so much luck. So these are all the maples. Oh, okay, so let me zoom in on this a bit. So right now we've got this pedestrian connection from the end of Middleton Beach Road, and sadly north is to the left here. effectively. So this is the south curb line, and this is the north curb line, if you will. And we had this goal of a crosswalk that comes through here, but we also have a couple water valve vaults, so manhole castings that are gonna be at grade right there. And we wanted this to be a raised crosswalk,
Mhm.
which would effectively mean all the flow that's coming from the west heading toward the lake would require a couple of extra inlets here, but we've already got inlets here. So I asked Kevin to look into moving the raised crosswalk to the lakeside of the inlets we've already got to capture the road drainage without adding more storm sewer, which then makes us reroute our curb ramps to get up and down to the sidewalk. But on balance, I think we end up with a better long-term solution than putting an extra set of inlets in.
Can you
Are
not,
you moving that connector path? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Sean?
From.
And how
here-
far are you moving her?
Oh. 20 feet, maybe?
And the
And-
reason is because by raising that crosswalk, you're hoping to minimize water drainage into the lake. Am I understanding? that
well,
correctly?
increase pedestrian safety?
Yeah,
Pedestrian safety and some
Speed control.
traffic calming, yeah.
yeah. Because there were concerns about speed control, there were concerns with pedestrian safety, but by raising this up, we're effectively putting a dam across the street, which
Mhm.
means we need to get inlets on the upslope side.
And that, I love that idea. I'm wondering though, why can the sidewalk not veer to the south?
Here,
Well, see how it's coming from Harbor down in the bottom right corner?
yep,
Why could it not continue on that same line?
well, we're either gonna go around this fire hydrant or move the fire hydrant,
Okay.
which starts to get expensive and disruptive to Middleton Beach
I see,
Road
okay.
again. But part of our goal is this is never our goal. We
Yeah,
only did this
right.
for a very special reason.
Mhm.
Because every time we plow the street, folks at Harbor are gonna get upset. There is no place for this snow to go except on the sidewalk. And nobody likes that, but that's just how it's
Sorry,
gonna
I'm not
be.
hearing you.
So I'm saying when we plow this street, the sidewalk is gonna get snow. It's much too narrow for a snowbank not to get onto the sidewalk here.
The new sidewalk you're putting in?
Correct. And we're only putting it in that close to the street to, at least for
Save those
now,
trees.
save those trees
Along Harbor, you're talking.
along the harbor parking lot. Yes, right.
Can we go back to I'm sorry, I'm really
No,
speaking
go
out
ahead.
there here. On the path through. There was a lot of discussion about where to place that from the entry onto Middleton Beach Road because of consistency with keeping it out of traffic versus coming right in. We had discussions of it coming right into the middle of the cul-de-sac and so forth, and the conclusion was that it is safer, and that's where the natural walkway was, where people were going. Can we keep the entrance where it is on Middleton Beach Road and simply angle where it comes into Lake Street further east? So you're not on your manhole covers, you're avoiding that.
To build a sidewalk connection sort of from here
Yeah.
to here.
Well, the other thing I would ask is the raised crosswalk concept is new versus any other plan that we had.
It was talked about at the preliminary design stage.
It was,
Expensive.
yeah,
Yeah.
and well, it was during the discussion and really, yeah, years ago when we've talked about it, we've talked about how much noise that might generate for neighbors and so forth.
Yeah.
And would rather, at that time, we would rather not have had it. So, I guess I'm questioning, is that really what we want to do here?
Addressed
Yeah,
it because of the speed concerns on the road, and it was very strongly stressed to us that they're very concerned about speed.
right, and
Thus,
that,
we put in the raised crosswalk.
And the speed, I'm the one that instigated the speed in the first place.
So, yeah, that's why it's there, and that's not really gonna increase speed or
Well,
noise, I don't think. And why would it increase noise?
I think part of your point though is moving the connector path east. Makes it
you could save the
much more
tree.
tempting to cut through and drive through and it's not as accommodating to the bikers and the walkers as it is. Most people cutting through there are going to Allen or coming from Allen as opposed to the park.
Yeah,
And that was
it's
one of the
a couple
reasons
of
why we
ways to
liked
do
it
it.
where it
It's a
was.
placement that's would not have occurred to us, you know, and
Yeah.
for one, versus where it was, the entrance on Middleton Beach Road was discussed and agreed upon originally, and so
So I think it could still meet Middleton Beach Road over here someplace, which also helps drivers understand that this
Right.
is not a continuation.
A straight
of the
drive
street.
Mhm.
yeah,
Right,
because we actually have had a drive-through on that pathway. So having a little curvy into it would probably not be a bad thing.
right. Yeah, so part of what I think we were looking at is while it seems intuitive that we would put the raised crosswalk here because
Where
we've
the
got a
path-
curb ramp
yeah.
there.
Sure.
What it costs us extra is another set of inlets that we'd have to connect into the storm sewer.
Mhm.
And we'd be sending the raised crosswalk across metal castings, which we try to avoid if we can.
Correct.
So in looking at it on balance, I think there's a better solution here that's much lower cost, but also better from a pedestrian.
Sure. And if that can angle, you know, down to the east, the cross through path, then that potentially allows you to maybe angle that sidewalk a little bit to save that tree. That one mature tree.
I think that other tree is probably here.
Mhm.
And if it's possible, I provided the picture of it. It's just a very large mature tree and that I was told to plant those for screening, you know, Todd, it was screening between the Harbor Athletic Club because lights come right through into the level of the house and so forth from up. Yeah, but in any case, it's just, it would be hard to see that mature of a tree go at this.
It's true. I know we have an ordinance that prohibits the planting of evergreens in rights of way, largely because
Yeah.
the base keeps spreading. And every time somebody tries putting one of these very young, small trees right next to a sidewalk, they end up trimming it to death.
So it's kind of fully grown, but yeah, that was part of the common council. Told Todd and I go out there and figure out where to place trees
Oh. Yeah.
at the time.
So given this picture with the cul-de-sac, could trees be added after the sidewalk is in?
On the inside between
On the-
Middleton Beach Roads.
Yeah, on south of Lake Street there around the cul-de-sac.
Potentially, that's a conversation we still want to have with the city forester, and partly we wanted to figure out what utilities are going where
Mhm.
and what improvements are going where before we start getting into that, but we do want to include trees as opportunities allow, consistent with our policy as part of this project.
Okay.
We haven't
Because
been
I
able to
think
show
that-
them yet because.
Well, I think if people
getting-
know that eventually there would be at least some trees there or a few trees added, would
Right.
make them feel a lot better once these are all cut down and they see the sidewalk there and the open
Yeah,
space.
sure.
And I don't know the process to do that.
That's what the city forester, I mean,
Hmm.
with designs at this level.
Yeah.
We can start filling in where are opportunities for planting.
And that's part of what Public Works would do
Yes,
along.
With forestry.
with this,
With
yeah, with
forestry.
forestry, with this project.
Okay,
So usually the trees that go in are deciduous. Well, I think I got my terminology mixed up, didn't I? They're usually deciduous. What's there is evergreens. right now. And we like to make sure that we maintain an opportunity to do like for like, because of the screening, it keeps people from driving through, so forth for the considerations, because it's
Becomes a
kind of a
buffer.
unique, it's a unique spot.
Didn't you just say we have a policy against?
It's an ordinance that says, do not put these in rights of.
And
So it would take the common council to waive the law. It's not a staff level, it's not a committee level decision.
it's funny because most of those right around the end of the bulb there, not the one that I'm advocating for, but around the end.
Yeah.
I think it was Penny that put them in.
Yeah, well, she should have known better. That's her ordinance.
Because originally Todd and I knew that was too thin because there's a natural gas pipeline too that goes through there. Now that the cul-de-sac is wider or there's wider green space, if we could entertain it somehow, that'd be great. We understand that there's an ordinance, but we'd like, at least have the thought out there for landscaping or something to look at that whole end, what's happening.
Yeah, I think we all like trees, right? So we want to get the right ones in the right place, right?
And that's the foresters.
That's the foresters.
Yeah.
Yep.
So not to
Sure.
beat this to death any further, but
Yep.
so far we have determined that we're gonna take the sidewalk at the crosswalk and take it at an angle over towards the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, to the degree we can. I think
Yeah,
most
you're-
people like to walk up and down the west edge of the road.
Kevin, you understand that?
Yep, I got notes on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
so then we can move on.
Something about a bench, and I
Okay, the
didn't
bench.
understand
All right,
this.
well, if you look at the park portion of the plan, there's one bench and there's a kind of a footnote with it that it's, I forget what the wording is, privately owned and will be installed by the owner. And after we had Middleton Beach Road redesigned, we were asking to have a bench put in the north cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac was made smaller because there is no place for walkers on our street to really sit. And Emily and somehow the neighbors got together and got approval for that and collected the money for that. And so the idea was to put the bench in the cul-de-sac and have it face Middleton Beach Road. And I know at the time, you said we have to wait until we get the Lake Street redesign done.
So kind of
before
where
we
the
can
trees
do
are
that.
coming down, I think.
So it's sort of in that, yeah, in that space where the trees are, or maybe it's west of that. I don't know the best place to place it, but it seems like this is the time to figure out where to put it.
So this is a bench that already exists?
No,
It's
it
fun.
has not been purchased yet, but the Middleton Beach Road neighbors have collected money to purchase a bench.
Okay.
And the idea was to put it someplace in that smaller cul-de-sac.
So Kylie works with the bench purchasers on placement.
Okay.
I know
I
that
think
for a
that's
fact because
different
I
than these.
purchased.
Yeah,
it.
that's.
Well, I don't know, because I don't understand what the bench in the park that says it's privately owned and will be installed.
It just
Those
says
might be
installed.
donated as well.
By owner on these plans means by
City.
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 It means the contractor will not be putting the bench
Oh,
there. But we
okay.
will.
So, well, then maybe we're still missing, and maybe in this plan, we ought to earmark a place where we can put that bench that we got approval on and
Like a
we have
separate
money for.
project.
It's a parks project, and if it's over by Middleton Beach Road, it wouldn't be part of this project at all. So no, it wouldn't be on these plans.
But I
The
would,
contractor wouldn't be putting it in, the city would.
reach
Well,
out
that's
to
okay,
Kylie and
Reach
mention,
out to Kylie.
yeah.
but I guess I don't understand the approval process, because it's public land that that Public Works maintains.
Mhm.
And I don't know the Public Works role versus the Parks Committee role in trying to get this bench installed.
Yes.
And I'm not sure it's really dependent on this Lake Street project. I don't
No,
know.
I don't
but
think
we were
it's-
told to wait until the Lake Street redesign was completed.
Okay. It feels like probably not, but what I think you're describing is like a citizen purchased bench like they have in the conservancy areas. But that you wanted at the end of Middleton Beach Road someplace?
Someplace in that cul-de-sac area.
Okay.
So
that would be
it can-
something
so people can
Kylie would take.
sit, take a break, look at the birds, listen to them, meet a friend, whatever.
It could be, I think that they're kind of thinking like maybe there would be a pad next to the cross through path or something like that, a pad, cement pad where the bench would go eventually or something like that.
Okay.
So
I-
part of maybe placing trees or something later.
I would say talk to Kylie before
Yeah.
the park commission's March 18th meeting. They're gonna be talking about this design.
Yeah, on the 18th, bring it
Yeah.
up there.
So definitely, well, I would bring it up before then, so she's aware, because, I mean, it could be that maybe they suggested waiting because benches are going in here. And
Yeah.
it might be easier for parks to just purchase the bench with the money that you've collected or not, you know, I don't
Yeah.
know if they have funds for a bench and install it at the same time, but
But I mean, I know when we talked about it before, Sean, there were questions about you didn't want the snow plows to hit it and where would we
Yeah.
place it? And,
Mhm.
you
That's
know,
still be a
How it
problem.
gets mounted, so. Okay, I can. Put that down for next parks meeting. And then I did have one other question in looking at the boat launch on Lake Street today. And I think Mark brought this up too, the lighting down there. Have you looked at lighting for down there?
We're not looking at changing the lighting.
Because there are two terrible looking poles down there with a totally outdated wire stretching between them, closer to where the boathouses are. And it seems like that would be a missed opportunity not to make those light poles better or get the wiring underground between those two poles.
Yeah, those are MG&E wires and MG&E poles.
Okay, so you wouldn't do anything with them. You're gonna you would leave that old stuff there. when you're
Typically,
redoing the
yeah, they
street.
would have to replace their poles if they're gonna get replaced.
But is that something you can help facilitate?
we are working on a project to replace things, but I'm impressed that
Fixtures.
you knew those were MG&E.
Because every street light is an MG&E.
No,
Not all.
most of them.
Most of them, I'm sorry. Most.
The odds were with him.
Yeah, yeah, your odds were excellent.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, we don't,
Yeah,
I don't know that we have much sway with telling MG&E what their priorities are.
Yeah.
In terms of polls, I know they occasionally.
If you
replace
don't, I don't
things,
know
but-
how neighbors do.
I think the point he's making is MG&E is hard to budge on stuff like this.
Yeah, well, they operate at a different scale.
Mhm.
you know.
I mean, when we redid the road, we worked with them to get an estimate on putting all the wiring underground
Yeah.
and stuff, and they were very cooperative as far as I know. But-
Yeah, they did provide an estimate.
And maybe that's a question more for the boathouses or for you Lake Street residents.
I think what a lot of burying line and stuff like that turned out to be very costly and I would like it to look better down there and aesthetically, I think it would be great. I'm afraid that MG&E would not do it cost free.
Oh, no.
No, they'll charge you by the
Right,
foot.
No,
right,
not at all.
Right, so I think that there would be lines above, whether or not it would be desirable to have some more lighting down there. I think that could be advantageous because even with the conversion that we're talking about and putting hours on the landing and stuff, it can be very dark down there and tend to attract people parking and odd activities and so forth. And so some additional lighting, we've always felt like some better lighting might add to our security or feeling of security down there. Now, part of it is because if there's a city park or, attracting people to come down there, but this will have hours now. I know it's all a balance and it's like, I know the lighting costs money. It would be great if we could entertain something as part of a project somewhere to do something better and better looking.
Well, and I would say it's not just money.
Yeah.
We want to poll almost everybody and find out what their preferences are.
Mhm.
You'd be surprised when one person says, put a light pole in, the next person says, take that out.
Mhm.
Right, right.
Yeah, and we're
exactly.
not suggesting adding or subtracting,
Yeah.
but simply upgrading.
Oh, okay, okay.
At least
Yeah.
I'm not. But I do think you should also think about a video, at least wiring for potential video surveillance cam.
Yeah.
Maybe
those
that
aren't-
doesn't go in, but at
Those
least,
aren't just pricey, but they take time then to monitor and download.
right, no, I understand that.
Is it worth just saying to MG&E, hey, this work is going on down here now? Is it the right time to upgrade?
We're actually gonna change fixtures in a pretty wholesale basis to LEDs.
Okay,
So that's gonna be a difference pretty much regardless.
downward lighting to make sure, yeah, try to be consistent with the lighting. I know we're trying to focus on the dark sky initiatives and so forth, and I know stargazing is a thing down there too. So, you know, if there's any legwork that we can do or you think that we should do, we'll engage that.
Would that overlap with some of the things sustainability is doing? Lisa?
No longer on sustainability, but I mean, our new zoning and with this new zoning code, we did pass the outdoor lighting.
You know, sustainability would be the upgrade to the LED ones.
Yeah,
Okay, that's all that we need.
it's already in progress.
Happening, yeah, so.
Funded.
Yeah, we just got the agreement finally.
I'm just wondering if the park design, should there be a light of some kind in the park design itself?
Well, that's
Instead of being lit.
Yeah, and something for Kylie to look
Yeah.
into, I would guess, yeah.
Maybe couple more lamp-like
Yeah, right.
fixtures
right,
that
something.
shine down and it's on the immediate pathways there and so forth. And if that's illuminated, then you know if there's activity in there, you know, if the
Mhm.
police are checking for the hours and stuff like that. You know, the rest of it is, that's helpful. I think that's a good place to start.
Mhm.
Because that is something where reconstruction is happening and would it.
Again, that would be something to be brought up at the Parks Committee meeting.
Right.
Which would be, and again, get to Kylie before then, so that she can get it on the agenda. It's an item she wants to add.
Well, and our feedback is going to parks as
Yeah,
well, right?
yeah.
So because just looking at the design, I'd like to see, you know, an artist's depiction, but it does seem like some sort of.
By the way,
Old fashioned.
I know there's no electrical service down in the park at this point, so that would be another cost from MG&E to bring in an electrical service.
It's close. There's a pole that's very close with the.
Again, there is no service.
Right down into the
Yeah,
park,
there's
yeah.
no outlets, there's nothing there.
Right.
It's two lights.
That's true. You're correct.
So I think that covers Ginny's.
Yeah, thank you
memo.
very much.
And Tom's memo has, I think, 4 issues.
I think that covered the bulk of it, Sean, except for my most critical issue was the number 1. And this has to do with the request is basically taking the same approach that's taken to Save the Trees by Harbor to narrow the terrace and to do a little more narrowing down in front of the residents. I think that Mark, they're over on the north side, they're interested in this as well. But whatever we can to just keep, our expectation really is have the city help us maintain our privacy, try not to cut back on trees, because we have a facility that's going to attract more people from, you know, that's not our neighbors using sidewalks. It's fairly close to the houses, but you know, I think what was fair and reasonable was our expectation is that would be in the existing footprint where we already have activity, a footprint of the road. So to what extent we can, just trying to keep the sidewalk edges inside or to match the existing curbs there. And that you could do that from the numbers that I'm seeing and everything, Sean, by just keeping the terrace narrower like you did up by Harbor. And on the part of the snow clearing, I'm glad to clear that snow or take care of that, the snow, because right now we're going to have so much less snow from the narrowing of the street that we deal with.
Tell you, you're gonna be unhappy with a 4-foot terrace.
Yeah,
That's gonna happen.
No,
it will be. Because I have 4 feet in our neighborhood. and
It's not gonna be
Yeah.
fun, but it's sort of the
Yeah.
best we could reasonably do, right? So MSA on the north side of the street, Let me zoom in a bit. On the north side of the street, laid out the sidewalk as best they can to go just a little bit past the curb, but still short of the property line. And kind of the same on the south side of the street, where they went just a little bit past the existing curb line and well within the right of way. I mean, that's
It is.
normally 9 inches to a foot, and this is closer to, I think, 3.5 or 4 feet on this side. So this is really abnormal.
And I do appreciate that. Once again, if we can, I would accept a narrower terrace down there in place, it just to do what we can to keep the sidewalk from impacting the existing trees and screening that's on our property. Because a foot or two is going to make a big difference coming in on the evergreen trees that I have. And curtailing, if you see the pictures that I sent, and also the one residence as a driveway, it's going to bring it pretty close to the back of a regularly parked car.
Again, that's about 1.5 feet, I think, give or take.
Yeah, it's just over a foot, and I can, one other thing I'll just mention is when I walked out with the forester, he basically said that ideally, basically what we did is we kept a 4-foot terrace here, and that's what they would desire for planting city trees at a minimum. So when there's no plans to plant, to my knowledge, city trees there now because of the private trees that are there. But when something were to happen to the private trees, the city could then put in trees within the terrace, and they wouldn't want to do it in anything smaller than 4 foot. So we went out there with a tape measure, and he thought that he could keep all of the coniferous trees basically that are there with that. There may be a branch or two that will have to get trimmed or something like that, but he didn't think it would bother those laying it out the way it is here. So that's where it came from.
Kevin, can I clarify that are you saying that it's a foot, just an additional foot beyond the existing curb?
Correct. It's about 1.25 feet, just over a foot beyond the back of curb now is where the back of the walk would be.
Okay.
And all those trees are preserved.
Correct.
And the branches are pretty critical to the screening. I don't know how much damage would be done to them, but anything, all I'm saying is that you had a narrower terrace, and I don't see where we're going to be planting trees between the curb and the terrace anywhere. We already set a precedent on the Harbor Athletic Club that the trees are on the outside of the sidewalk. They are right now in front of the apartments. Nothing is planted on the terraces and in front of the apartments. It would just be very consistent to keep all the trees and plantings on the outside of the sidewalk.
That's what's happening here.
It would be, so my expectation would be, we don't need a 4-foot planting, because that's just going to fight the trees that are there, or 4-foot terrace. So I guess
Things going on by Harbor, the trees seem to be, for whatever odd reason, planted largely on the property line. So I don't know if those are public trees or private trees, but a decision was made as a special exception. Let's try to save them if we can. Now, that doesn't make for a very good terrace. It doesn't make for a very good walking experience. So if someone opens a car door, you should be watching out for that sort of thing. Nobody really likes a 2-foot terrace, but that's kind of what we've got. We wouldn't want to say, well, let's just start doing that every place anybody asks that. And that becomes the design standard, because anybody would say, well, gee, I would like to extend my front yard just a little bit extra. And
I understand. I would just really ask you to consider this, because this is also an area where we're attracting traffic and stuff to a public landing or to the park. And it just helps your neighbors to live with this and in a cooperative way. And to me, this is just part of the balance. Yes, we're going to share our neighborhood, and we want to with this great facility, and just keeping to the roadway where it is would just be a great expectation. And we're willing to go with that.
Okay, well, and the
So-
city can do something different. My advice to the city is
Right.
let's try to keep a bare minimum standard here.
Right.
So. Okay,
And there was no way to, the harbor wasn't willing to let us put the sidewalk on the south side of the tree line, right?
I don't know that
Which
we
would be-
asked for an easement for a sidewalk.
isn't that part of their parking lot?
Trees.
Yes.
They would lose a lot.
It's
Parking
tight.
lots right there.
Yeah. Yeah, they need all the parking they can get.
Sure.
And you could just tell from the pictures that I sent that it's tight. I mean, the trees are planted well within my property, but they're mature and they're the screening that I have.
Well, and it sounds like they will be preserved.
Yeah,
But the limbs may be, well, okay. I would
And
be
we
willing
went into that a
look at
lot where
yeah.
people put evergreen trees right next to the sidewalk and we're constantly reminding them that they've got to trim branches because of
Oh,
where
yeah.
those trees
And
are.
I trim them where they are. I'm afraid that with people walking and everything, I'm gonna have to trim them back quite a bit more. And,
Well, we don't usually get that. We usually get like, oh, I'll
Right.
trim it off the edge and
Right.
next year you can call again.
right, and as part of the compromise and because it's gonna happen, just asking for another foot. To move over to where the existing curb is. I don't think anybody else in the city is gonna really notice that difference.
Well, I can appreciate that and I
Yeah.
hope you're hearing that this
Yeah.
is more than a foot on the street side of where we would ordinarily want the sidewalk. We usually try to maximize that buffer between cars and sidewalk, snow and sidewalk. And
So how big is the terrace there?
4 feet.
So it is a 4-foot terrace.
It is a 4-foot terrace.
they got that because of the street being narrow.
Right.
Right.
And trees are not gonna be planted there. If we're consistent with the rest of the, with the rest of.
Pretty much what we've said, but.
Short term,
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I mean, as properties change over and or trees die because that's what they do, then there might be an opportunity for a street tree, but
Yeah.
not in the short term. It would just be too crowded, I think, for.
We've got a lot of agenda.
We do. So were there other things on your note? Todd,
That was
we
my
should-
primary ask for those two residences down there because we have such an exposure. It was just trying to have as much help as we could in maintaining, kind of this,
Yeah.
where the lines are right now. And getting help with that. And my expectation was certainly fair that you'd be using all the existing road footprint for sidewalk. And so my ask is just be consistent with the curb. If it's another foot to squeak it out,
Well, and again, I mean, I hope you hear that
I do, Sean. I
we're
do.
already proposing not using the public right of way. For this, and instead pushing the sidewalk away from the public right of way for this.
I do have a question on the storm sewer. So I was happy to see the revised plan that moves the storm sewer box further west from, with the angle. So
Yeah.
that does get it away from our spring, which I'm happy about. But I am a little concerned about how much water the existing storm sewer pipe is carrying and whether, I didn't see in the plan, has that been calculated? I just want to make sure that with the additional water coming off the street, that it's not going to be too much for that existing storm sewer line, which we have yard drains that go into, I believe Lake 61 feeds into it. So I just want to make sure there's enough capacity.
But less than what it is now.
Well, I think what Mark is talking about though is the capacity of the existing main, which right now the street is bypassing.
Right.
For the most part. At least everything east of the last set of inlets is bypassing, I'll say it that way. So we're gonna, with a new cul-de-sac, end up capturing some extra water and sending it into this piece of pipe, existing pipe. And I don't know, Kevin, if you've looked at calculations, ordinarily we design pipes for a 10-year storm. And after that, they surcharge, they overflow. So even if there's not capacity and this is at a 9-year storm and then it overflows, it's going to overflow at some point. There certainly will be a storm where these inlets can't pick up all the runoff and it'll pop over the curb and go down the sidewalk and into the lake.
Mhm.
That's just the nature of the beast. So I don't know that these are adding a lot of water, but do you know, Kevin, if there was capacity in the existing pipe?
I'll have to check with Eric on that one. I don't 100% know on that one offhand.
Okay, I don't either, and it would be disheartening to find out that there would be some incentive to upsizing this pipe, because that would certainly disrupt the springs if that pipe had to get bigger. In which case I would rather just skip the inlets and let it go to the lake.
I was wondering if it would be possible to put in like, but that would change the whole, but like, could the
An
inlet be
overflow.
routed to the lake? And so there's an extra storm sewer outlet to the lake rather than tying into that one and sending more water into it.
Yeah, and that's part of what I had asked Kevin to look at, and I think what happened is by running the pipe through under this wall, the pipe ends up so low that it'll be underwater in the lake. And so, you know, I think it had been previously just straight north from the inlets, you know, so the manhole would be here. And after our talk, we decided, well, nobody really likes to go upgrade just to go downgrade, but to get it away from the springs, it was a
Mhm.
good trade-off to
Mhm.
get a manhole over here instead.
Yeah,
But getting a pipe under this wall didn't work. So then our better bet would have been to try to put a low point here and just every time it rains, just drain water down the sidewalk and into the lake. Not that anyone wants that, but would have been a better bet. So even if this diminishes whatever capacity that pipe has, it shouldn't really hurt anything. It'll just surcharge the pipe and at some point bubble up, but it does that already during big storms.
Sean, what action do you need from us? Do you
Good
need
question. Well, what I normally look for is final design, and I know Kevin's touching up a few things, including what we just talked about, but to get this project out to bid. Again, looking back at those timelines, it's starting to get pretty late in the year already.
So if we had a motion to approve the plans, including the things that we've asked Kevin to look into, we would approve it and get it out to bid, but I think we need an update for our next meeting, Kevin, as to where you're at, because we still have parks.
Right, so Parks will talk about it next Monday. I don't know if there's any impression that this should go back to the Common Council that following Tuesday.
You'll have to give us a schedule and then our next meeting.
Ordinarily, design questions like this don't go to the council unless there's a significant policy issue. Usually, the Public Works Committee approves plans and we get it out to bid.
Okay.
This one, we already went to council once.
So if we had a motion to approve the plans with the minor modifications as discussed today, that Kevin's gonna look into and make the modifications.
That'd be satisfactory for me, and I know, and right, you had your hand up a long time ago. Not gonna ignore you.
I have so many thoughts on this, but I feel like my thoughts were pertain to way back when the first discussions were having about this, so I don't have anything to add at this point.
I really like the expedited schedule to try to get construction done in June to September so that there's some use of the park.
That means that park's gonna make no changes. Well, you can advertise it on the 18th
Yeah.
and still deliver them a week later.
I think too, you know, we've got a little bit of time to make minor modifications, even after the first ad.
And I know Kevin Strand has never, ever done that when I worked for
Hi.
him. This will be my first.
So you're saying we don't have to go back to council? That's in the second schedule.
Yeah, we don't really have to. Ordinarily, we don't. If the committee thinks there's something in here that's
I don't think there's anything radical in here.
different enough or big enough that the council should weigh in. or if Park Recreation Forestry comes up with
Yeah, they
something
might.
that's so different than what we did, then it should go to the council.
Yeah,
Um,
and that'll never happen a day later.
But I think they can focus on the
Yeah.
park area.
Yeah,
And for me, this is mostly about a water
The
main
water main,
replacement.
right? Yeah, it's easy to lose sight of that, but that's.
Lisa,
I
you
will,
were-
I'll just add on to here, just while you guys are looking at the schedule that Sean's mentioning and Sean can add in, but you know, we kind of put obviously the most aggressive one, trying to get it out to bid as quick as possible. But if Parks were to come back and there was some changes that we can't get it out necessarily by the 21st, the other one where we were advertising in May was kind of assuming we would maybe try to have that DNR permit in hand, but you know, there's no reason that those dates couldn't shift by a week or 2 weeks or something like that too, if Parks came back with something, you know, so it might be a little bit of a hybrid, and we could definitely, you know, Sean or myself, we'd give you a quick update as to the schedule when, you know, if we shifted something a little bit, but it definitely, if it didn't go on the 21st, it doesn't have to wait till May, obviously. It could still go earlier.
yeah, there's April.
Yep.
Don, I can make a motion.
Okay,
I move for the committee to approve the plan for bidding, subject to revisions or minor modifications by MSA
as discussed today.
as discussed today.
All right.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Any further committee discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Are you gonna tell us how are you gonna pay for this?
Yeah, here comes the fun part.
So can I request a 10-minute break since I'm the chair? I'm requesting a 10-minute break.
Just declare it, man.
I'm declaring a 10-minute break. So you found a pot of gold somewhere?
Yeah,
End of the
that
boat
was-
ramp?
That's never been my problem.
Thank you all for talking and working with
Oh,
us.
yeah.
Actually, you know, the biggest part of the project
unmute us and see
Okay.
what's, if
We need
Kendra and
either-
Terry, if you're back in the room, if you'll, when you're ready, turn your cameras back.
Kevin. Maybe Kevin's funding this.
I'll be-
Exactly.
Gary's back. I think,
Not video.
not video.
I can. Send reminders on the screens. Then we'll know.
Well, as long as we have our quorum.
You have our forum. We can go ahead. There we are. Okay. We're all back together.
Fair is fair. So everybody's back. We have our quorum of 5 members. And we can continue with business. So next up on our agenda was Lake Street and Dewey Court construction funding. And we've talked about this just as a broad overview once before. And with either the finance committee or the council, maybe both, at preliminary design. But now that we are at final design or near enough, we have an improved estimate of project costs that Kevin broke into buckets for us. So what comes from where, showing our either surplus or deficit among each of the funds involved. And I think last time we were looking at something in the same ballpark of a general fund deficit. I think the water utility got a little bit worse than last time we were looking at it. But we do have additional funding available in the water utility because we had budgeted this year for Franklin Avenue, and that's not happening.
Okay.
So we do have some 2024 funds identified for water utility improvements that won't be needed. They can be diverted to some degree over here, but we're still stuck with this really large shortfall in the general. And last time at preliminary design, I think we looked at just 3, maybe 4 different ideas without picking any particular one. A couple of them tried focusing on moving road project funds to this road project, just so it's all kind of in the same family. That certainly doesn't have to be done. But the biggest ticket item that's available in the 2024 budget is the resurfacing in the Kenyon Drive area. I think the second biggest one is resurfacing in Northwest Field, which is in really poor condition pavement wise. And I think probably our third biggest thing is chip seal surface treatments. I hesitate to get into that because our best chance to keep reasonably good roads in reasonably good condition is to do surface treatments. Just its cost per square foot is by far the smallest thing we deal with. And we looked also at the downtown Elmwood Avenue resurfacing project, which needs to be done, but at least it's short. So it didn't have a huge price tag with it. So I think the Kenyon was at about $380,000. And downtown Elmwood was at about 170. I think Northwest Field was at about 260. Beyond that, we looked at park development funds because part of this is a sort of a park development project, if you will. So about $210,000 could be talked about in terms of being a park, and that's in this general fund number. So there are a few options, but we're going to have to make a recommendation, I think, to the finance committee about what a preference would be.
Kendra's got her hand raised.
Kendra?
why was the budget request so short? Why is it at 615 and then the construction cost came in 300 grand more?
I think the big part of it is, from a road project perspective, we were looking at the wrong scale. So this was prior to any design work being done, it was just pulling a number out of the air. And based on a couple of other just road projects, I think what we missed mostly was all the extra curb and sidewalk work that were gonna be desired here. But also then we're digging up enough stuff that we're getting into road base issues. So with undercut and new gravel and geotextile fabric, that starts to add a lot of money too.
Okay, it surprises me because I feel like we've been when we started talking about this project, I feel like well before budgets were collected in the fall. So I'm surprised that we came in this short.
Yeah, no, this was put in without the benefit of any cost estimate.
But didn't we start talking about plans last summer?
I think we talked about the idea of this
Okay.
project, but not the design of it.
Okay.
Can we go bucket by bucket and try to figure this out? Because I think the Lake Street Park, I mean, it is a park, so why not bill that to the park development?
Yeah, this park development has no money, I would assume, other than what they do for lawn mowing and treatment.
That's a segregated fund.
That's a segregated fund, but it should come out of that 610 as far as public works is concerned. That's 650.
Yeah, right.
So really, we're at 415.
And this
400?
got kind of expensive too.
Yeah.
I mean, initially thought, oh, maybe we'll just keep the boat launch. We didn't know.
But
It
again,
became
this
clear
is,
that was gonna
that
be
is not part of public works.
But that's part of this 460.
Understand.
Right.
Understand, but it's not something that public works has to come up with the money for. So if you're talking a project that's 380, 170 and 260, you could take, I don't know, the 170, you're almost there already. Because we're only really 240,000 over if you take out the park.
Yeah, if we take 210 out of here, we're at about 250.
So the water utility can cover the $193,000
Yes.
with money that we've already budgeted in 2024 that is not going to be used on Franklin.
Right.
Okay, and then the park, 210, 990 and 50 cents. We would recommend is billed to the park development fund,
Okay.
use those funds, that's what they're for.
If they have any, and if they don't, they have to get it from the general fund or something.
Well, I'm looking at the budget. For park development improvements, they're approved for $250,000, but you know, they had the Parisi Park shelter is a big
Mhm.
expensive project. But I would think council would support tapping that fund to pay for park development instead of making public works pay for it.
Yeah, it's sort of no longer a road.
Yeah.
And that's a fair way to look at it.
Well,
Yeah.
what's missing from here is the 30,000 that we might have to pay back, although let's hope we don't have to. But then going back to my question earlier about Allen Boulevard, the sagging,
Mhm.
how much of the water main, how much of the work that's in these buckets is related to that?
To be in this, would that be in the sewer utility
Right,
cost?
so you're saying that's part of that $74,000 work, Kevin? That Allen Boulevard sewer replacement cost is part of this 74?
Yeah, the only thing I'm trying to, can you scroll up, Sean? I don't have a copy of the with me or on me, but I just was trying to, nope. Yeah, so it looks like we did put the asphalt pavement and stuff in with the sewer, so yes. So the roadway work and stuff for that sewer should basically be in the sanitary bucket there already.
For Allen Boulevard.
For the Allen Boulevard crossing.
Okay,
So one option you brought up, Sean, was the maybe the deferral of the Kenyon project, and I know we had talked about that a while ago. I'm wondering, didn't we just last time talk about the possibility that the neighborhood wanted to have a little more input into what's done with that resurfacing project?
I don't recall.
I think I'm sitting over there and I'm pretty sure.
Wow, you remember.
Well,
where
they're-
you were.
Yes, but Sean clarified because it was improvements that were petitioned for under a traffic thing, they actually have to go through the process to get it taken away. And I don't know that they're gonna do that.
We have two processes for traffic calming stuff. So one is that we follow the actual process, which is laid out in the neighborhood traffic management program. The other one is the city has written into the process, just that the city can, on its own initiative, do stuff. We tended to shy away from that because that's what made us create the policy in the first place, was that after we just did stuff, enough of the neighbors were angry that the government just handed them a solution to a problem they didn't agree with.
Right. And I haven't heard from anyone about it in a while. And I believe it was more for the Westfield Road. So as long as we don't take it from Westfield. It was the improvements that were put in. Let me make sure I'm calling it the right road.
That was contentious from the vote on.
Yep. So that's why I think, because of the contention, that you would want to do the petition again. As far as this from the city's perspective. And I do believe it's Westfield and not Kenyon.
Yeah, some neighbors never did want that in, and some immediately wanted it out. But our process does fairly say, well, if it got voted in, it should get voted out.
Right.
And nobody wanted to take that up.
They could be, for all I know, but if you haven't received anything, then probably not.
Not lately. Every now and then I hear from one or two people, but neither one of them wants to go petition their neighbors and
That's kind of what my read on it is too.
yeah.
So then it's would we would attack at this point to take it down the road here?
Well, how big is that project?
Well, and that's a pretty big project. That's like 380. Yeah, so it could get trimmed back instead of abandoned.
Does that mean trimmed back? Does that mean spreading it out over the next 2 years then?
Right, which may not be a good idea, but it.
No, but
be
as
looked-
long as, my concern is when we keep, and we talked about this at the last meeting a little bit too, or prior meetings, we have a 5-year plan. The more that we fuss with it, the more that we push things back, it just throws all communications with the public off. It throws off council planning as far as budgeting goes. It's just difficult for us as a city to look like we have a clear plan on how we're going about things. So I'd really like not to deviate from our streets plans as much as possible. I think it's one of the most important things that we do as a city. It's one of the things that I hear about from constituents more than anything else in my district is the streets. And we need, so I do think that we need to honor our 5-year plan as much as possible.
However, I agree with you, Kendra, but I do think if you like split Kenyon Drive and just did part of it, I think that would be really not great though either. Like, I think we'd get a lot of complaints.
Yeah,
Just
and
because, you know what
yeah.
I mean? You're dealing with like construction for 2 years versus just like getting it in
Correct.
one swoop.
Right, and I really appreciate, you live right there, so I appreciate your input on that. It is a long stretch of road. So
Yeah.
I could see how someone would say, you know, we're only closing down half of it. Well, to get into that neighborhood, there's you know, one way in and one way out each way. Like, it's one long street and all the cul-de-sacs that come off of it. So there's not a lot of feeders out of it any other way. So when you close down one half of it, then the other half becomes.
And my neighbors probably would disagree, but I don't think it's that bad. And like, if it was deferred another year, I don't know.
Well, and the option might be to do the cul-de-sacs, but not the main line. You know, ordinarily we would defer those just backwards, like skip the cul-de-sacs. but that we'd have enough money, but it might get something done. Or, if we need 250 out of 380, that leaves 130. Go do something else that's pretty small.
Kenwood designed, ready to bid?
Resurfacings don't really get designed
That's
per
just-
se.
that's just,
We
yeah.
take some soil borings
Okay.
and hire a
No,
contractor.
never mind. You don't need really an engineering document. for that. You can just do it. So there's always the case of bidding this and then deciding on what part of Kenwood we do.
As long as we
It's
have a
kick the can
plan.
down the road thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the finance committee allocated 100,000 or left $100,000 in unallocated capital projects. Can we use?
Oh, okay, that I never keep my finger on that pulse, so I'm glad
Okay.
you know that.
Yeah. So that's
feel like-
100,
For other stuff, though.
what?
I thought we had talked about that it's getting late and my brain is not working. I'm trying to remember if we started talking about using that on something else recently, but I could be misremembering. I'd have to revisit my notes.
Capital projects throughout the whole city.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if the place needs new air conditioning, it comes out of that money.
Right, but I mean, this was excess funds from last year
Oh,
That-
okay.
that every February we figure out what to carry over and then
Okay.
what's excess funds that we wouldn't need. And so instead of putting it all into the vehicle replacement fund, we kept 100,000 as unallocated public or capital projects. So that could be used.
That could
to
be
get
what I'm
down.
thinking.
Yeah, that could be used to get us a little closer. And actually,
Oh,
go ahead, Carrie.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, like, to me, like, could we explore bullet point number 3 and just have the finance committee work on that piece? Because I agree with what you all are saying. Park development funds should be involved, and then I don't know. Seems like we're kind of talking about bullet 3.
To just
Yeah.
go
Yeah,
find two
it's like we
someplace.
do that, and then the finance committee can look at what other funds might be available, and then come back to us with options. Like,
Yeah,
And they certainly can anyway. I think normally we as a public works committee, if we're talking about moving a road project to a different road project, historically like to give that advice to them, even if they want to go a different direction. But we certainly don't have to. I think we just prefer to give that input.
But the difference is you're, instead of deferring Kenyon for another year, possibly de-scoping Kenyon. That sounds like more of the direction we're.
You're trying to get
do we
finance, find the money?
can I?
Yeah.
I
do we
like,
normally do that though? Do we normally, Sean? Like, I just again, like, I don't know. I don't know what my neighbors would say, but do we normally do cul-de-sacs separately? Because again, that just seems like annoying, right? To have like a cul-de-sacs done and then a year later road done.
It does, yeah, especially the people that live on the cul-de-sacs are like, you were just here upsetting my life and now you're back. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. That's
But
why I'm
it
like,
does
I think
get
it'd be better
something
just to
done.
defer the whole thing than try to de-scope it. Like, I think we're gonna have people that are just like, what in the world is the city doing? Like, why would they be here for a part of the road 1 year and then they bring all this equipment back? It just seems like pretty inefficient to me.
It kind of is.
I kind of feel like our recommendation to finance and council should be to use the park development fund for the park and find money to pay for the rest of it. Because I don't like the idea of deferring or splitting a project. I'd like, Alder Wilkes makes a good point that we should stick to the 5-year plan as much as we can. We have this $100,000 that's in, that's unallocated for capital projects. And we learned at our meeting on the 20th, the finance committee learned that our investment income last year was $738,000 higher than we had budgeted. So
Let's
we will
find the money then.
we will have a surplus that we're supposed to find out about in a future meeting, so I think.
Another problem I don't have.
So I think I would just recommend, the park part of it, and then we don't want to take the money out of other capital projects. We need to find the money to pay for this.
Okay, I'm fine with
Leave it
that.
up.
Yeah, I agree with
Is
that.
that
That
a
sounds
motion?
good.
That'll be my motion.
I will second that motion.
Let's see how this goes.
You think it'll go great.
Yeah, I know, and she's on finance, so we know we've got.
I chair it, yeah,
Yeah.
on it too. Right,
All right, next.
wait, we need to vote on it.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Was there, Ian, we got a second, any further discussion? That was too easy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion carried.
So next up is a resolution if the city is tending to special assess for typical improvements per policy, which for us means new curb and gutter where none has ever existed before. On this project, I don't think that would be a thing.
Sidewalks.
Sidewalks, we assess for typically a full cost of brand new or replacements. And then driveway aprons, we typically do at 50%. So right now, the city hasn't answered that question, which is, this is how we normally introduce that question, is to say, do you intend to assess for street improvement components per our policy?
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah, so we need a motion for that to send it to both finance and the council.
And the council.
Okay, this is scenario. I move that we recommend to the Finance Committee and the Common Council approval of Resolution 2024-13, declaring an intention to levy special assessments for improvements associated with this road reconstruction project. The Lake Street and Dewey Street reconstruction.
Carrie, I'll second.
Carries. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as put forward by Lisa, seconded by Carrie, signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? Was that a hand raised? No, it was not. Never mind. Hearing none, motion carries.
So next up is a referral to the committee about snow and ice control operations from the Water Resources Management Commission, which has been talking about this issue several times over the past year. And let me go to the memo because it has the actual recommendations. Which are, I guess it's sort of three buried into two. Is that one, we should explore the impact of reducing salt application. And I have no idea where this number came from. But whatever, reduce salt. And then two, use sand salt mix on residential streets. And then I'll say third referral is that the city should make a sand salt mix available for pickup and use by residents at several locations around the city. And I've got a bunch more information in there, but those are the guts of the questions that they wanted us to address. And I guess we can talk about any of the specifics within any of them. I would say at a very high level, and our operation manager, Brad Hopwood, is here tonight too for specifics to the degree we want to get into it, but we don't have a set number of pounds of salt per lane mile that we would apply to all streets or even arterial streets. It depends a lot on how much is forecast to come down, what time of day it's forecast to come down, what its moisture content is, what the pavement temperature is. So there's a lot of things that get considered by our streets crew foreman, who is charged with our snow response plan. So it isn't me, it isn't Brad, it's our street crew foreman, boots on the ground decision of here's what's happening, here's what's forecast, here's what the crew is going to do to respond to this. But we don't have a preset number like, oh, on University Avenue, we're putting down 150 pounds per lane.
So let me ask this, with that, Brad, do you have a feel or on average, how many pounds per mile we use? Didn't it, and I know you just said it varies depending upon weather, moisture content, temperature, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, but you must have a feel on an annual basis about how many pounds per mile you use on average.
We were,
That's not- Average, I would assume that's a per event.
yeah, so we were right around, in like 2017, we're about 350 to 400 per lane mile, and we've reduced that dramatically since then, down to about 200. And I have had conversations with Eric Sorensen about reducing that down even further, depending on the snow event and everything else, to see if we can't see how far we can reduce it with still keeping safe streets and passable streets within Middleton. So right now we're right around 200.
Okay, so we're close, a lot closer than we used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
It does seem like a good question to like, again, like I live in a cul-de-sac and I know sometimes they are kind of selfing when I'm like, well, do we really need it on a cul-de-sac? Because it's, I don't know, people are driving slow. So I think it's a good idea to explore this more to, just better understand like maybe where can we make reductions where it makes sense. And maybe help standardize some of that, like on certain streets, like maybe there is only sand. I don't know the types of sand. Like that's the other thing. Like, I think that's better, but like I would want to have more of an expert understand that part of it too. So I like the idea of this. Like I think it's always good to review. I guess Sean, like what do you like need from the committee for this? Like would we need a motion tonight, or is this something that we need to like?
Well, right, so I think the overarching idea is that we'll minimize salt use. And that we've been doing for over a decade, as sort of a focus of what can we do, what can we try? I think one thing that we bang against is we have an impression of citizen expectation that may need to get adjusted. So we're starting to bang into that. Part of what we've heard from some folks is, oh, plow more, salt less, or salt less, plow more. But our crew is sized such that plowing takes 8 to 12 hours. So we don't get to just drop our blade and keep going around the block. That's not an option. So those who are getting plowed first have to get some residual salt behind them because snow is going to continue falling. Those who are getting plowed last, we're going to be plowing more. We don't need as much salt behind them because snow might be tapering off by then, or it's starting to get to rush hour. So we're always looking for that kind of thing in the planning and post-planning that goes into this, is like what worked, what didn't work, what would we do different from a Monday morning quarterback perspective. And I get a lot of that input of here's what you should have done, but they never call me the day ahead of time and say, here's what you should have done. So it's a frustrating thing to know, based on the limited information that we have available to us, what's the right thing to do, right? And so sometimes we'll go out during the day, but having trucks out plowing in traffic is really inefficient. And a lot of times streets are parked pretty full, so it effectively means the next night we're going to go back and do cleanup work. But sometimes to get ahead of evening rush hour, that's what we've got.
As it is now, residential streets are put at the end. I mean, you don't do those until the snow event is pretty much over.
Our highest priorities are arterials, collectors, bus routes.
Yeah, okay.
Emergency routes, school zones. That's our highest priority stuff, right?
Okay.
Everything else has to wait. Some of our things are driven by needing to be cleared by a loader or a skid steer,
Mhm.
right? But we have one loader, so it's both loading salt and trying to clear, some areas. So that just goes when it goes. It's not like we have a backup.
So it sounds like, I don't know where they got the 150 pounds per lane mile, but it sounds like the recommendation that we could make to council is to, congratulate Public Works for reducing it already, but maybe aim for, they wanted to go.
Aim for less, yeah.
Yeah, they wanted to go down from 150, but we're not even there, so maybe that's a starting point, is to, continue to improve. I'm thinking, what is this equipment like, Brad? Is it like, John Deere equipment on the farm where it's like calculating the spread rate for the seed based on what type of soil you got, how much moisture is in it? Is it that high tech or no?
It's not really. It's a closed loop system. So basically what it does is it gives you certain functions that you can either, blast the salt or not blast the salt, have a certain rate, and then that's going to tell the computer what rate to pre-wet the salt before it hits the road, so it's activated right away. Generally, like I said, when we see a storm coming up, myself and Bill, who's the streets foreman, will have a long conversation about it, trying to figure out what we're going to do. And then when we see what the actual storm brings, that's when we kind of come up with, all right, here's how it's going to work. So there's other technology out there that gets, which would have a lot of budget implications, that can tell us as we're plowing what the road temperature is, what the rate of salt should be. We've been taking some stuff from other municipalities. They have like a cheat sheet that they put laminated in their truck saying, if the road temperature is between this degree and this degree, and we're getting snow at this rate, this is what your dial should be at for salt. That's the type of stuff that we're starting to try to venture into. So that way we know we're doing what's right without having as big of an environmental impact. So the computer system we have, it's more, it's better than what we used to have, which was just, I think we're putting it down about 150. Now we can actually measure that. So I get a receipt from each truck saying they put down, X amount of pounds on the road and X amount of brine on that salt. And we know just about how much driving they're doing with that.
Okay.
So it is like the John Deere tractor.
But
Kind
it's
of.
better than we used to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we can
But
calibrate
John
it.
Deere track, she is describing something very complex and complicated,
Yeah.
and I agree, that's what we're doing.
And so we have different
Um,
settings that are selectable.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And it's documented what we're doing, so that's good.
Yeah.
How about the calibration? Because the other thing I noted in the memo is that it looks like you all are doing the things that Wisconsin Saltwise recommends. So I'm wondering, is calibration, is that costly? Can it be done every month? Is it better to do it every, than just once or twice within a season?
It's more time consuming than costly, and we do calibrate multiple times per season. We don't just do it at the beginning of the season. We do it multiple times to make sure that we're staying on what we're supposed to be doing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the big thing that Allison had mentioned as a recommendation was, well, number one, the plow more, salt less. And that's difficult, but citizen expectations may have to get changed, and that's a difficult thing.
Mhm. Well,
take
we
on.
have a communications manager now.
We
And
do.
that would be a good message to be getting out, because I do my newsletter. I hope you guys get it. And I always, as winter approaches, I always put in the Wisconsin Saltwise info and, when the webinars are and things like that. And I don't know the numbers here, but it seems to me like I see piles of salt on sidewalks and at Lily Street, you know, like big
Yeah.
piles of salt. And I can't help but wonder, are the residents and businesses contributing more to the problem of salinity in our surface waters than our public works department is through? They do.
That has always been a source of frustration for business owners.
Yeah.
You know, just the potential liability or the
Right.
fear of
But didn't
liability.
the legislature pass a law of this? I thought they did.
I think they
Allison knows.
finally did. They've
Yeah.
been talking about it forever, but I think they finally got it. And it's a voluntary program that would say to commercial applicators, not, you know, city municipal kinds of folks, but commercial applicators, that if they go through a program that's endorsed by the state, like a SaltWise kind of program, and they follow its guidance, then there's some liability protection for their clients.
Mhm.
So if you hire one of these certified applicators, they don't necessarily have a bulletproof umbrella, but they do have some shield, right? You know, and that was a really big thing we've been begging for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I hope that's good next year.
I'm just thinking like we could focus on trying to get Public Works to do more of what it's already trying to do. But might it be more effective to devote the resources to getting the chamber to talk to, you know, like having somebody appear at the chamber meeting to talk to businesses about this new law and here's what you probably should be doing if you care about our surface waters or groundwater for that matter. I just feel like we'd get more bang for the buck if we try to change the expectations and the actions of businesses and residents.
Yeah, right. I mean, I've always felt, because I walk a lot in winter.
Yeah.
Like some of these places, my feet cannot touch concrete.
Yeah.
I'm just walking on salt.
Yeah,
And that's
it's-
always disappointing.
It is, and yeah, like, can we print up little door hangers? So when you're walking to work and you
That's
walk
enough
on
for the whole
salt,
winter,
you
dude.
could put the door hanger on
Yeah,
the
you
door
use
saying,
too much salt here, buddy.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. Although I will say this, and Brad's here, so Whittlesey Road is like stranded when there is snow because the only ways out from that whole neighborhood would be up Pheasant Branch Road or up Algonquin.
Yes,
And both of them are steep hills, and if you don't have a four-wheel drive, you are not getting to school or work or your son's band trip to Puerto Rico.
Where there's
On the
probably
day-
no snow.
On the day that he was set to leave, we had to get one of the neighbors to take him up the hill.
Oh, yeah.
He made it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way around that.
Yeah.
So I think you had a good point. Have the city keep doing what they're doing. And then try and establish an outreach program to commercials, businesses. Oh, I think if you looked at the pounds of salt commercial people use versus what we use on all of the streets in Middleton,
Right.
you're
The
talking,
scale is.
get an outreach to 15% maybe, and the city still does 85
Mhm.
of the poundages.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised, you know, because we work with the school district on salt shed storage, and they use a lot more than I would think for the coverage that they've got.
Again,
I
they're
mean, I
panicked
was-
because of the buses and cars dropping off kids all the time. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it's got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
thinking like, wow, it's a pretty big city compared to the school district, and yet
So-
it's a fair amount of.
That's item one. Item number two, we used to do that in the
The
city. You
sand
could
salt
go out
mix.
and get a sand salt mix out at the garage. They had a pile of it, froze, so you could never get any of it out,
Yeah,
but it was there.
right.
And the city abandoned that approach. And to take the approach, regretfully, I go into Madison quite a bit, one way. Grateful I go into Madison quite a bit. They have barrels periodically throughout the city that you can go in and scoop some out, and about 10-15% of them are tipped over. because of vandals or whoever. And it's another maintenance issue that adds a staff to go out and fill those up.
Yeah, I don't know when we quit setting barrels out. It was.
I don't think you ever
predates
did.
me.
Did you ever in the city?
We did, and maybe still do, put one out at the top of Aurora Street cul-de-sac, only because we knew that neighbor would be very responsible in using it and no one else would know it was there.
Okay,
I don't know if we still
yeah,
do.
like I said, the city does, and the city of Middleton used to have it at the garage, a big pile of it that they would sit out, and if you wanted it, you could go get it. And about the time I thought, I'm gonna go get some, well, it wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, and that's something that, I don't know if you knew Toby Ginder when he was
Yeah.
Director of Public Works.
Yeah.
He had told me, because they stopped doing it before I was around. And said, folks were taking it home, but then they'd put it in their flower beds or in their sandbox, but it's mixed with salt. And I don't know if they knew it was mixed with salt. So it's bad for carrots and children. And so you'd want to discourage that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If anything, you'd want to say, they have bags of sand over at the hardware store that aren't that expensive. So if you want some, go get it. But when it's mixed with salt, it becomes a different beast.
Mhm.
In fact, during winter, it can be stored outside, though it will freeze into clumps. But the rest of the season, it has to be stored indoors.
Mhm.
So we need room in our salt shed for it. We try to keep a little bit around just for the days when it's very, very cold and there's spotty ice. Sand's as good as we've got for that, but it's not very good. It doesn't tend to stay where we put it. So I went to a UW class, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, and they said when people used to mix like 50% sand and salt, it was literally a sand salt mix. And they said that's as bad a product as you can get for winter, because the salt won't work the way the salt is supposed to, and the sand won't work the way the sand is supposed to. Sand only works when it's at the top. As soon as it melts in, you've got nothing.
True.
And then it follows up the meaningfulness of the salt. So they were like, whatever you do, don't put down like a 50-50 sand salt mix. Use one or the other. But again, I've heard of some putting sand on like snowpack, but as soon as tires roll over it and kind of grind it up,
Yeah, then it's worse.
you've got icy sand, but not traction per se.
So I think that item needs more study, evaluation, and budget establishment. I mean, you gotta figure out what it's gonna cost to do that. If indeed you're gonna set barrels in.
I think Gary had a comment.
Oh, I
Gary?
was just gonna say, I agree with what Lisa was saying. It's just like, it sounds like the city's already doing, what, you're already looking at this, and so maybe like trying to figure out if you can even lower it from the 200 level or to continue tracking it, that kind of thing. And then I agree, like maybe we could do more. I don't know who would do it, but the business outreach and education would be really a good idea. Because I agree, like when I'm going into stores, it's just like, and when I go to Harbor, for example, like there's just so much salt.
Yeah,
I understand
Harbor's-
that like there's a lot of people, like you were saying, you don't want anyone to fall down, but it's really, I don't know, a lot.
Mhm. What about the live edge plows?
Mhm.
Brad, can you tell us about those?
You talk about the rubber coated ones?
Well, it's just number 5 on the memo says use live edge plows, which are spring supported segmented blades to better remove snow.
Those are the ones, Brad, that are segmented. Each individual plow blade on the overall blade is 1.5 feet long, I'll say. They're spring loaded, so they'll trip.
Yep.
I watched
Yeah.
some videos of those. They are fearsome blades. They will kick stuff up.
We actually have something like that on our skid steer. That's what I operate when we snowplow in the area we call Tiny Town. We've had to do a curb replacement because it took the curb out with it, got the curb edge, and with the spring loaded portion of it, it wrecked the curb. They work for what, if we had insanely great roads in Middleton, they'd work pretty good. but as we don't have the greatest road, I mean, we do have some good roads, but there's some that are not that great. If you ever go down Parmenter out by the shop, you'll know what I'm talking about. They're not they're not all the best. So one of the things I talked with Allison Madison about was what if I could do it differently and I had unlimited amount of money, what would I do? And I said I would just double our crew. So that way we can kind of do what the county does, 12 on, 12 off. So 12 hours you're on, you're plowing, and that way you don't have to throw down all the salt. You don't have to do all that. But that's going to take a lot of personnel to do that. And a lot more money.
Or we'd have to contract with someone to supplement the city staff.
Correct. Yeah, and that's I've looked at the contract that Sun Prairie has for one of their subdivision. It's a hefty price tag.
Yeah, I think they have a retainer that's guaranteed plus hourly.
$30,000, and then there's an hourly rate after that. So once they get through that 30 grand, whether they get through it or not, they have to pay that out. And this year, I'm not sure that they did. We didn't have that much.
Yeah, this year was lucky. I am interested in that new the plow technology. I've actually had some complaints about damage to the terrace areas in people's yards this year because of the plow. Which I had never actually noticed it, and I don't know if if it happens all the time, but I see it everywhere now. I feel like now that somebody's pointed it out to me. So I don't know if this was a particularly bad year for that or what the issue was, but I would prefer I don't always know that technology that rips out curbs is the best thing. So
Right.
And that was, I mean,
blades jump the curb, and scar up some grass. We do go around in spring and topsoil and seed those areas.
oh, that's
But
good enough.
I think part of what hurt us this year is the ground never really did freeze.
Freeze. That's a good point. That's good. I thank you for that, Sean. I didn't realize that was something that we did to go back and do that. So that's good.
Okay, so it sounds like we want the Public Works Department to continue exploring where to make reductions to get to 150 pounds. Educate residents and businesses about the problem, about Saltwise's recommendations and new legislation. Have Brent put out information on what we're doing well. These, what we're, because if we're already doing what Saltwise is recommending, I think that's a message that we would want to get out to people. Examine the cost of sand/salt barrels. Consider adding crews and/or contracting for more plowing.
More
I
plowing
really
less.
like that idea, that last idea to like really explore that option of like how much would it actually cost and if we could budget it in. Like I think that's a good idea because the more like if we can avoid salting, right? Like that's
Right.
win-win. So
All
and
right, so
not saying, Brian, you already explored it. I'm not saying that you haven't, but like maybe we can like have more of a formal thing that comes to Public Works and we could maybe try to help budget it.
yep.
Right. So going back to sand barrels, what's the level of interest in that? It hasn't been my experience that we've actually done it. I've only heard of other people's experience with it.
Well,
Is
and
that
didn't the
their-
memo talk about how that it wasn't actually very effective?
Well, that was the research I was able to find from the few communities that were actually trying to set those things out, is they tend to collect garbage or people leave the lid off and they fill up with ice. Or they're empty and not filled. So you might be driving around from one to the next looking for a little bit of sand.
Yeah, thawing out this one.
Yeah,
I'd rather,
a great idea. I don't know. But
I'd rather go somewhere and pick up some from like by the operations center or something.
Yeah, I know Madison sets out sand for public use at a couple of parks. In fact, some Middleton people told me they go over into Madison and get sand,
That's
which seemed odd. But
Logistically, though, it sounds like that might be a challenge. If you don't have a lot, you just have a small amount on site now.
for us,
How many people actually put salt on their sidewalks or driveways?
I think everyone in my neighborhood does.
Do they?
Little
That's why
dry
I
on
wanted,
one of my
that's why I want the
sidewalks
door
once.
hanger. So
I use a little bit because my front sidewalk is on the north side of the house and never sees the sun.
Mhm. Yeah,
So once in a while I have to do it, but I mean, it's twice a year, maybe 3 times. And this year, once, and because we had no real snow melt, it just melted.
well, maybe this is a practice that the city's supposed to be surveying its residents about their satisfaction with city services and their ideas. Maybe this is a question that needs to be posed to people when we do our next survey.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so the last time I know the committee talked about it was quite a while ago, and they didn't reach a recommendation that the city should be in the business of providing sand mixed with salt. But that maybe the sustainability committee at a clean and green event would want to find a sponsor to do that sort of thing, except I suspect the time of year was just not conducive to something like that. Because nobody wants a bucket of sand in fall.
Mhm.
Right.
So I don't know, you know, if we wanted to put some sand at a park, it's not like it would cost us a fortune. We'd have to mix it with some salt. And I think we'd want to warn people that there's salt in it to not put that in their garden. But
Then
what they
again,
will do with it, I don't know.
access and protecting it from the elements.
Yeah,
I
there's
mean, you
no good way
pile
to
it
do that.
outside, it's covered with snow when you need it,
It will for sure.
and you gotta chip through it to get to it.
Yeah.
All right, so examine the costs, pros and cons
Yeah.
of sand salt provided.
I have to jump off now, so I think we're pretty much at the end of the agenda, but I gotta.
We
I gotta-
are, I'm gonna promote that.
Bye.
All right, thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Yeah, and this is something that, you know, the WRMC can be apprised of our discussion and, you know, that we appreciate their bringing this to our attention. I wonder if it's something that the council should talk about at a committee of the whole meeting this summer in anticipation of something coming, you know, Brent and others getting out there a few months before the snow hits again.
Well, that was a big, what I was wondering is if we want to try to reset expectations, we have to ease into that and say, hey, if you're on a side street, expect it to be covered in snow.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That
Maybe
would
all,
actually be great. Yeah, so again, like I'm on the cul-de-sac and I don't really, I mean, from my perspective, and again, I would defer to you all or you, Sean, Brad, and like what's the preference, but it doesn't seem like it needs to be salted at all. Like I would just wait until the plow comes, but I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a possibility.
I know when I lived on one of those side streets in Madison, my experience was that I drove on snowpack all winter. And then in spring, I drove on snow potholes. And so it was a lot like driving over a ladder for several weeks until it broke up enough that a plow could get under it. So it was really miserable every spring. We would have, I think, some citizen interest if we tried doing that, but that is one option to reducing salt is reset that expectation for
Mhm.
low speed local streets is to say, you're gonna be driving on snowpack.
But I'm always impressed how fast the plows come actually. Like, I mean, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like Middleton does a great job. Like, I haven't had to drive too much on the snow. Like it's when before the plows come. So I don't know if that's but I agree with you. We'd have to educate people so that they know like this is intentional, right? We're doing this.
Right, because I think what they would see is, oh, you guys are slacking off. But they don't know why.
Be in the fall newsletter.
Mhm.
Yeah, a readership of dozens.
Nobody reads.
We'd be warning people one at a time.
Yeah. All right, do we need anything else on this, or can we move on and go to what items?
Future meeting agenda.
We don't want to talk about it the next. Let's see, that's what we're talking about next.
I have nothing to suggest for next time.
Me either.
Me either.
Same here.
Nope.
Hey, no items.
Okay.
We're good.
I'm sure I've got something on the draft.
I'll bet you
Anyway,
do.
so.
I almost wanted to say, can we move this salt to next 2 weeks?
Move salt.
I was
Move
gonna
it
say the
Next
same
2 weeks,
thing.
just to, because it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right, by general consensus, we adjourn.
Yep.
We're adjourned.
Hi, Carrie. Hi, Brad.
Bye, thanks. Thanks,
Thanks,
Brad.
Brad.
Lisa,
folks.
I
Have a
love
good
your
night.
newsletter.
Yeah, have a good night.
Thanks.
I look forward to them.
Oh,
There's so
good.
much good stuff in there.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time.
Not a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
When
I
do you
used to-
find time for that.
I'm retired.